Welcome to Audacity Works, a podcast inspired by and dedicated to the working artist, the creative entrepreneur, and generally, doing the damn thing. This exists on the premise that the world belongs to those who have the audacity to believe that their lives have value. This is for you. Welcome to Audacity Works. I am your host, Rachel Strickland, and this is episode 99. Oh my god. That means next week is episode 100, which feels momentous. It's been almost 2 years. So to that end, if you're listening and you're an alumni of the Audacity Project, you have an email with a small request that is time sensitive from me to you. No pressure. You can ignore it, absolutely, but it is there. More updates. This week is public launch week for my girl, the woman, the myth, the legend, the movement maestro, Dr. Shante Cofield. And her program, the Instagram Intensive, is loading up this week until Friday only. Here is when I would recommend that you take the maestro's Instagram Intensive. If you want to benefit from Instagram and from social media, and you hate it, and you need to reform your relationship with social media, take the Instagram Intensive. If the tech is intimidating or it's confusing, or she goes over all of it. It's very actionable, extremely effective, and I will champion it every time she launches it for as long as she launches it, because I took it and it reformed my relationship with social media. I kind of hated social media. I didn't want to be perceived on it, and now I love it. I took that years ago and it has been extremely helpful. Also, it's fun. It's just fun, and the maestro is the best. I mean, I quote her almost every week on this podcast, so I know if you're listening, you know who she is. But if that sounds like a cake that you want to sit down and eat, I will put the link in the show notes. It will be there waiting for you. Open until Friday only. And if any of you listening are in the DC area, I am coming up into your stomping grounds in October at Monarcha Studios. Trisha, the fearless leader of the studio, has invited me down to hold a sort of pre-performance intensive on the weekend of October 25th and 26th. I'm offering 5 different workshops. That'll be in the show notes as well. We're going to be doing everything from the Buttermelt workshop, live and in person, to stage presence, and we're doing a work in progress showing that's 3 hours long. So whatever you have that you're working on, yes, it's enough. 30 seconds is the smallest amount. So if you have 30 seconds of something, bring it. Really looking forward to it. Would love to see you there. Side note, do me a solid. If we know each other from the internet and we haven't met in person before, sometimes I have a really hard time with faces, and I haven't yet connected your human face in real life with conversations that we've had on the internet, however intimate those conversations may have been. So just can you just be like, oh yeah, this is me. This is how we know each other. Oh my God, I would just really appreciate that. There is also room left in the retreats that myself and Jenny Tufts, you may know her as Circle Circ on the Grammy Grams, are co-hosting at Sweet Retreats in Mexico in late January, early February of 2025. We just held a live about it today. I'm recording this on Tuesday the 17th. We held an Instagram live about it. It's still up. I'll link it in the show notes if you're curious about that retreat. We did some myth busting and addressed some frequently asked questions. The one that I get most of all, just go ahead and repeat it here, is people are afraid they're not going to get challenged enough in the intermediate retreat. It's not true. Intermediate and advanced, there's not all that much difference between those 2 weeks. So don't worry about that, because if you're there to be challenged technically in your hoop skills, Jenny is capable. And if you're there to be challenged creatively, I'm up for the task as well. And honestly, the work that I give is the same in both weeks. because I don't care what skill level you are at. I'm going to give you the same exercises that I would give Jenny, which honestly makes my life a lot easier. Okay, final update. There's so many updates today, but there's a lot going on right now. If you are in the LA area, I'm going to be at Boss Up October 10th and 11th. That is for female entrepreneurs, headed by the fantastic Dr. Shantae Cofield and Jill Fitt. Can't believe that I get to speak to this audience in this room and stand next to these people. I am so excited to be there. It's honestly such an honor and a little bit terrifying. Speaking of terrifying, oh, P.S., yes, I'll put a link to Boss Up in the show notes. And yes, you should come. If you run an online business and you're anywhere within the realm of health and fitness, you should come. It's the place to be for in-person group coaching intensively over a weekend. Right, but speaking of terror, let's talk about it. Any working artist will affirm, I think, what I'm about to say. Rejection is just part of what comes with the territory of wanting to put creative work into the world. There's no way around it, but that's not the thing that's terrifying. The thing that's terrifying is when someone says yes, when someone gives you a stage, when someone gives you an opportunity, when someone says, yes, come to the residency. Because then you've been given an opportunity, or you went after an opportunity, you've been granted the opportunity, and now you have no more excuses. The morning after a failure, getting up and doing the thing anyway, a lot of folks will say that that's a great metric of success, and it's the best test of an artist's mettle. I disagree. I think it is the morning after a success. Because the morning after a success, you still have to get up, go to the studio, pick up the pen, pick up the cordelise, pick up the hoop, or pick up your dancing shoes or whatever, and your task is the same as it was before the success and before the accolades and before the money that may or may not have come with that success. And that realization is humbling, because success is fun and accolades are fun and getting awards is fun. And then the next morning comes and you're like, shouldn't it be different now? Because I did the thing and people said yes and they liked it. Shouldn't something be different? No, it's not. It's not going to be different. Your relationship with the work is still waiting for you the next morning. Your task is still the same. Get up, do the thing, show up, tell the truth, continue doing the thing. And that way, just that realization and that understanding that the work itself has to be enough, regardless of its failure or its success and how it's received. The work itself has to be enough. Even if your book never sells, even if your show never premieres on the stage that you think it should. So there's a very popular way of putting things into perspective. That is, what would you do if you knew you could not fail? I'm going to change that script a little bit just to see what happens. All right. Instead of what would you do if you knew you could not fail? What would you do if you knew you were going to fail? Would you still make it? Because that thing, that it never actually achieves great success, and maybe it doesn't get any accolades, it doesn't get any awards, it doesn't get accepted into the festival. Would you make it anyway? Because when the answer to that is yes, you have identified your homework. Does it sound like I know the feeling? I have been plugging away at a little one-woman show on and off for years. It's called The Monstrous Feminine. My patrons have heard all about it, and it waxes and wanes as life does and allows me more or less time in creation, the most progress that I've ever made on the show has always happened during artistic residencies because of dedicated space and time where there aren't other things demanding my energy and attention. Well, last week was public launch week for me, which is all encompassing, by the way. Like when you're launching, not a lot else is happening. That is what's happening in your life. And the cycle is complete now. We have our cycle 27, and it's a smaller cycle than I'm used to, which means I'm going to have more time, which means I got to get my ass into the studio and confront this thing that honestly I would absolutely still make if it never had any success. If no one ever liked it, if I lost money on it, I would still make it because I have to. And going into an empty studio with that is very confronting. And I went Monday. Yeah, it seems like such a long time ago already. It was yesterday. I went in yesterday for the first time in a while, carved out an hour and a half just to be in that space. And what ended up happening was I sat down in front of the camera and just ranted to video for 17 minutes. That's like the length of these podcasts. I didn't know that was going to happen. It reminded me of a time when I started working on this. This is back in 2021 when I had achieved a success. I had been accepted into a big residency, 3-week residency, very fancy, highly desirable. So there was no escape. Like, oh, we were going. It was go time to do the work. And up until then, it had been pretty easy to have a certain attitude about the work because the thing I was trying to achieve was success in these applications. Well, then I got it. And I remembered a particular time, like going out to the Murder Barn, which is an excellent place to research the monstrous feminine, to do some research into movement quality. And I set up my camera, and what ended up happening was that I just ranted and raved for, you guessed it, 17 minutes to no one in particular. And once it happened to me on Monday, again, 3 years later, I went back in the archives and I found that video. And at the time, this is at the time in 2021, that first rant, I was really embarrassed by it. I had never planned to show it to anyone. But looking back at it now and being able to watch it at 42, 3 years later, still working through the same subject material and some of the same challenges as well. But that girl in 2021 was terrified of letting other people down. I was afraid of letting my patrons down. I was afraid of squandering the opportunity and not coming away with something satisfactory to myself that I felt had done the concept justice, had done the muse justice. And of course, rewatching that first rant from 2021, 3 years later, I could rest easy because I knew that I was about to make two pieces. Actually, I made blood meal and I made teeth, a 10-minute section of the monstrous feminine that is extremely heavy hitting. But that girl didn't know that. She didn't know. All she knew was that the only way out was through, and she was terrified of letting herself and the muse and everyone who believed in her down. So here's the thing about watching that first 3-year-old rant as I am today. It was really fun to watch it play back. At the time, it was humiliating, and I felt humiliated doing it. But watching it back, it was fascinating. As I am not a person who loses composure easily or often. And to watch myself rant, and it's not like there was big gaps in my speech either, but I was pacing around and I was throwing my hands and I was speaking with so much conviction. And I just wished that I could give that girl any amount of comfort that she was going to get every last drop possible out of the experience that she was about to have. I wish that I could tell her just to relax and to trust herself, because she wasn't going to squander the opportunity. So what I've decided to do is that I'm going to share that rant to my patrons in its entirety. Mostly at the urging of my good friend, Kat Doherty, who I shared it with this morning. And she was like, this is the most relatable thing I've ever seen. This is us. You are us. We are you. Everyone feels this, but it happens in this private anguish where you feel so alone. Even if you can tell someone about it later, in that moment, there's no one coming to save you. You just have to feel it and be in that private anguish by yourself. Yeah, of course it's relatable, but that doesn't mean that you have company in that moment. That's the thing when people say oh, you're not alone. That's not really comforting. It's never really been comforting to me when someone's like, well, you're not alone. I'm like, I know, but also I am. I'm alone in this moment, in this experience, because this is a private human experience that happens in my head. I can't lessen it by sharing it. And yet knowing other people also experience it, I think of it as part of the desert of suck. The desert of suck happens in the artistic process without warning. And generally, after the initial gloss and sparkle of the first few waves of inspiration have hit and then sort of ebbed away, and now you're not riding high on adrenaline anymore. It's just the work. You just got to do the work. And sometimes the work sucks to do. And sometimes it is boring. And sometimes it's painful. And sometimes it doesn't seem like it's getting anywhere. And sometimes you rant at a camera phone for 17 minutes in a decrepit barn. But what is not obvious in those moments is that is progress. It is actually moving the needle. It just doesn't feel that way. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. The thing that we're searching for so often is actually a feeling, not even the work itself. Yeah, we know we want to make the work, but we wish we felt a different way during. You're going to feel lots of different ways during, before, after. But would you make the work regardless of if it never brought you that feeling, just so that it existed? That is the work that I want to see. It's not the only work I want to see, but I definitely want to see the things that people would make regardless of success or failure or how they were going to end up feeling about it. Yeah, I want to see that. And that's what I'm making. So, if you have experienced some failure, congratulations. Give yourself a punch on your rejection punch card. And if you have experienced some success, my condolences. You'll be okay. Just show up, tell the truth, and do your work. It is okay if you don't feel wonderful when someone says yes to you finally. You'll feel lots of things. Success can be terrifying. And that is what I came here to say. So if you are a patron, I want to thank you first and foremost for making this podcast and so much more that I do possible, and also to be on the lookout for a highly relatable and lengthy video coming at you this week as I continue to push through my own creative process. And I do believe in slow art, so it will take as long as it takes. And I do hope that I have some more success to terrify me in the future. And I hope that you do too. Thank you so much for being here. If you have requests for future episodes, I would very much love to hear them. You can reach me always on Instagram at Rachel Strickland Creative or on Patreon at Rachel Strickland Creative. This podcast is powered by Patreon. I could not do it without you. Actually, I probably could, but it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't have a high sound quality. So thank you. My work is so much better because of you. Thank you. Until next time, friends, make your work. Be terrified. Make it anyway. And don't go back to sleep.